go ahead and move on. How about this time? We take turns reading each one. So maybe I'll start, and then Carolyn, and then Mark, and then LaSonia, and then Marion. Does that sound good? And then I'll read, I think there may be one more left. So I'll start with confidentiality. Maintain the privacy of individuals' thoughts and experiences shared within the circle.
Listening. Listen attentively and respectfully to each person's perspective without interrupting or trying to formulate a response before they've finished speaking.
Sharing. Share from your own experiences and feelings using I statements and avoid making generalizations or assumptions about others.
LaSonia, your sound's off. That always happens.
Curiosity. Come with a genuine desire to learn, explore, and understand new things.
Responsibility. Take responsibility for your own learning and growth, and be willing to reflect on your own biases, assumptions, and experiences.
Commitment. Remain committed to the goal of healing, growth, and understanding. Have patience and respect the process of learning and healing together, acknowledging that it may take time. All right. So I think let's have everybody just say their name again. And again, we can start with either discussing the reflection experience that we just thought about at the beginning, or you can pick one of these other questions. So I'll go first, and then whoever wants to jump in can jump in. So I'm Rachel. I'm in Missouri. And I actually really, I picked the reflection experiences or just the questions. I really thought about it while I was doing this. And it was really interesting to think about, when do I actually feel fully understood? I don't know that I very often feel fully understood. I feel like that is a very difficult thing to be fully understood. But when I have felt as understood as I feel like I have been, there is a sense of feeling like I can let down my guard, and that I can say stupid things and it won't matter. That there is just a sense of feeling of safety and knowing that you can just say something and make mistakes even, and that's okay. That person knows you and is comfortable with where you're at, regardless of anything. And I think even within this group, there's definitely been times when I feel that, and there is a sense of just your whole body just relaxes. You're able to just kind of let down that tense, tightness that sometimes we feel when we're not sure how another person is going to perceive us or see who we are. And I think that's, thinking about it now, I think we're often in that state of being. So that's kind of, I think about what that does to our health. Like, gosh, no wonder we all have high blood pressure. So whoever wants to go next.
Well, I'll jump in. Mm-hmm. Just as a heads up, I'm in Arizona today visiting Marcus and his wife and niece. And niece may be joining us if that's okay.
Perfect.
She is fascinated by this topic. And Perfect. Of all the people I know, she is on a mission to discover and learn and accept. And
yeah, I would love to have her join these just in general if she wants.
Yeah. So she's going to see how her morning goes. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I'd like to say first, a thank you to Sonia from the last discussion we were in a few times ago, because something that she prompted or asked us really has started me on some contemplation of things that I didn't recognize or understand about myself. I've kind of jumped into this group thinking it would help me understand others, not expecting that it was a reflection and education of some things I felt about myself that I didn't understand before. So thank you, Sonia. And I think that's part of this feeling understood. I think I didn't understand something about myself that Sonia saw. And I agree with you, Rachel, that it gives you a feeling of safety and relaxation and trust. Not only trust to the other person who is reflecting, who is reflecting things that make me feel understood, but trusting myself to be able to express some things that I keep really hidden. Well, that's all for me.
Anybody else?
I can share. My name is Lasagna Luther, and I have to say what I would really like to probably speak about is the experience where I learned I had more in common than I initially thought. So at the very first meeting, I had the opportunity to listen to Mark and to Marion. And the thing that I heard was their shame in being descendants in some aspect of Brigham Young. And I never would have considered that because, as an African American and as a member of the church for over 30 years, I have personally, just thought it was just me, feeling certain ways, but never thinking for 1 minute that the family members had their own, gosh, this makes me want to cry. Just that that they had their own difficulties with being a, to be able to hide the fact that you're a descendant of this person, that like for us, his choices, some of the choices, they caused harm. But learning that through recent talks, actually through history, some of the history, that Brigham Young was infallible and that God works with imperfect people, but that did not make him any less of a prophet. As I said, I'm a single mom. I actually have been divorced. I've been through the temple, and I've dealt with a lot of these issues, these experiences, and just the fact that that I could find that commonality there, and then also knowing that as a single mother, having kids, I've been able to reflect tremendously on some of the strong aspects of what Brigham Young taught to young women, because I have 2 daughters, and it was through his teachings and his uplift of where women needed to be, what we needed to learn, that has guided me through the time that I've raised my kids. And, the fruits of that is I have a daughter that's in college now, and listening to her personal story of what she's gained testifies to me that yes, there can be hurt, there can be harms. Yes, we have to discuss these things, but there is good in the midst of whatever else we see, and that it's us that we have to find that resistance. There's a resistance of a natural man, basically, that brings us, we want to blame, we want to do all these things. But in the end, it's being able to sit down with all of this and say, what did I learn from this? What could I gain from all these experiences? And what I've gained is that healing is essential. Talking about it is essential. And that when you only know one side of the coin, it's not enough, because there's a peripheral that encircles two sides of the coin. And so I say thank you to Mark and Marianne at the time for sharing your feelings about your shame, and that was powerful for me. So I thank you both for that.
I was going to say the last two.
Well, let me jump in. I didn't know what to expect. To tell you the truth, I've been to lots of over the years, lots of discussions and meetings, like on Martin Luther King Day and other things like that, and they get a bit routine. They're nice, they're wonderful, but sometimes I wish they would say something other than "I have a dream." I heard that somewhere before. As profound as it is, sometimes you need a little twist. But I came into this thinking, well, this is going to be somewhat routine. People are going to say what you expect them to say. But I guess I've been totally surprised in two respects. Number one, I kind of feel a bond with everybody here. And now, Carolyn wasn't in our first meeting, but I felt that there, and I could see it in her face, her goodness. I can tell she's a good person, and she can't hide that. Sorry, Carolyn. Another thing that's been surprising about this experience is it helps me see the world very differently. I see now that the Black experience is a central part of Mormon history, as much as the crossing of the pioneers. And I really have a desire, not, I guess I thought of this before as kind of, a sidelight. You go to Deseret Book and to buy some books, and, oh yes, you're interested in African American history, Mormonism. That's over in the corner there. I don't think that way anymore. I'd really like to see a book on Mormon history and theology where they talk about the crossing of the plains. They talk about the slaves. They talk about the people who were liberated. They talk about the people in their struggles that came out to Utah, who were farmers and were discriminated against. That is Mormon history. This makes me think that the gospel is broader, more comprehensive, and more wonderful than I'd realized. It's worldwide. It includes all people. And it's not a sidelight. It's not a sidelight. This is a central part of who we are. We are Black in some sense. Like Rachel said, she has a Black granddaughter. My great-granddaughter is part African American. Brigham Young's has descendants that are Black. That's all of this leads me to think in a global sense that we need to get our thinking up to speed and quit with the trivial. We need to get something big and bold. You know what comes to my mind? I hate to get flowery about this, but one of my favorite people in early Mormon history was E.L.T. Harrison. He lived during the time of Brigham Young and had some disagreements with him. But he was quite literate. He wrote this one passage. I don't know anybody that knows anything about this group. I'm odd for even bringing it up because they're so obscure. They lived in Salt Lake, and they had this literary club, and they wrote the Peepo Day was the name of their little magazine. And he said, "Let every heart rejoice. the day of darkness flies before the era of advancing thought. From out of these mountain valleys shall yet come a pure faith and a nobler Mormonism. With the assurance that that day is at hand, I subscribe myself a brother to all who do right, and no less a friend to those who ignorantly err. That's what I feel like with this group.
That's beautiful.
That's powerful.
Yeah, that was beautiful. All right, Carolyn. And I should mention, if anybody doesn't want to talk, please feel free to say, just get me for an hour or something. That's fine.
Oh, no, I want to talk. I guess I want to preface that if I really have that goal of trying to understand people, and a lot of that is eye contact and and having my face toward the people, all of you. And today with my granddaughter, and probably every Thursday, I'm going to be looking away and I have to go get snacks. And my intention is that I don't want you to think, oh, she's not interested, because that isn't it. And I'm just going to try. I don't want to stop coming to this group. And so I'm going to do my best to make myself understandable and understand what all of you have said. And I think that there's probably not, the feeling of being truly understood is a really an amazing feeling. And I have a friend who is able to do that. I learn from her all the time how carefully she listens. And I think one thing you can think of, or I think about, is when I'm not understood, what that feels like. And I think the looking at Christ in his life, the way he seemed to understand people immediately, and I love reading about that. And I don't want to emulate that, the best I can. So I hope you'll all give me a little bit of grace when I look away and when I have to stand up and get snacks or change the channel or let the dogs in or whatever. And because I would really like to stay with the group, and I really would like you to know that I'm interested and very much wanting to understand.
At some point, I would like to get an evening group. We'll have to see how things go, but if there's a daytime or whatever works better for you, just let me know, because there's a number of things that are coming up that we'll see how things go. But
can I say something?
Yes, go ahead.
I just want to piggyback on something that Mark said. I think it relates to, and it kind of expands this idea. I know we're kind of focusing on African American and Brigham Young, but I heard something this year that absolutely tugged at my heart. It was on the 24th of July, which is our Days of 47 celebration of the time that the pioneers came into the valley. And the comment came from a gentleman who is Native American, a member of the church. And he said all of his life, when the 24th of July happens, he celebrates, he hears about the wonderful pioneers, all they went through, all they did, and we honor and respect them, which we do. But he said all of his life he has waited for someone to say, let's talk about that day when the pioneers came and those that lived here already. I don't ever think about that there were people in the valley that this impacted. They felt invisible. And so I think that's part of it too. And I've thought about that with your comment, Mark, that prompted a thought as we've been studying 1 Corinthians this past while, where the Apostle Paul is teaching us that the ear needs the hand, needs the foot, needs the whole body. And it occurred to me that I'm a part of the body. And yes, as we talk, I need to understand. But I also need to understand it's just not understanding. I need you. I need the Black community. I need the Native Americans. I need every piece of God's children. And perhaps that's why it's taking him so long to come, is because we're not unified as his children. We've got to quit looking at color and race. We've got to go back to the common. We're children of God. And so I need these other pieces, and I crave that. That's part of this as well.
Yeah.
If
Thank you.
I can piggyback off of what you just said, just that one little piece about race is that when we look at race, then we're not considering the uniqueness of each and every person, because race just happens to be a color, the color of your skin. And that's not, if God was, if he cared about race, he wouldn't have created the diversity that he had. I mean, if you look at nature and everything about it, it is so colorful. He is just such a colorful God, and he is all about our uniqueness, and each of us contributes some unique part of that foot, that hand. Everybody is bringing something different. And if you don't learn and you don't understand the gifts and the talents and all of that of each person, then you're messing with your orchestra. You're making that harmony be singular, mono instead of poly. And so I love what you said about that.
When someone looks at me and thinks just that I'm a white person, they're missing out on a lot, because they're missing out on my incompetence, my stupidity.
It would be really good, just as a side note, to do a conversation like this just on the concept of race and the meaning of that. And also this, it's almost like there's this idea that there's race, but then we also have to be like, but it's not just race, right? There's so many. So that may be a conversation I think that would be worthwhile.
That would be fascinating, because it's not just race.
Yes, exactly.
It's beauty levels.
And so that I actually will write that down as an idea.
I'd love that.
Yeah. Okay. So let's move on to talking about truth and reconciliation. The quote here says, Dr. Androff goes on to explain that telling our stories, especially for those who've been victims and traumatized, can actually help us heal and recover. Denial or silence negates what happened for so many, which in turn negates their lived experiences. Confirming what happened validates people, and that is part of what makes truth and reconciliation process so powerful. People often ask me, how can we do social empathy? Using the process of truth and reconciliation is a concrete way to be socially empathic. Hearing the stories of real lives, even when it makes us uncomfortable, is how we can engage with others authentically, and in the process encourage healing and change. That's from Elizabeth A. Segal, Ph.D. So let me see what I want to do here. I feel like a lot of these are good to move into. Let's do number 1 and number 2. I think these both kind of talk about witnessing what you have experienced personally in this area. So question number 1 is, can you think of a time when someone shared their personal story, or sharing their personal story helped you better understand their experiences and emotions? How did that affect your perspective on their situation? And then 2, have you ever witnessed situations where denial or silence about a difficult topic prevented healing or understanding? How might acknowledging those experiences have made a difference? I'll start, and then maybe we can go in the same order that the order for me is, it's like me and then Carolyn, Mark, Lasonia, and Marion. So maybe we can just go in that same order. I can speak to this idea where silence is difficult and really does harm. The interesting thing in my experience within my own life is that there's a particular situation where I didn't even realize that there was healing needed. I didn't realize that it was there until I did. It was like one of those situations where it's like, oh, I think maybe Marianne, it's kind of that idea that all of a sudden you realize, oh my gosh, wait, there's something here that needs to be healed. And I wasn't silent about it because I was like, felt like I had to be silent about it. I was silent because I didn't even recognize that there was some pain going on, which is interesting. I think that probably happens often. But once I recognized it, it was like, I guess I'm one that I will talk. So I did, but it also, it was difficult. It's difficult to then speak to something that is painful. But I will say once I did that, it was hard, very, very difficult. It created a lot of emotional turmoil, but continuing to work through that process, has changed both me and this other person involved in very, very deep and good ways. So for me, being able to hear and understand my own story and how that impacted and kind of flowed within other people's lives, and then to be able to speak about it, even when it was hard, to move forward with it and continue in that process was deeply, deeply healing. And not just because it felt good to say something, but because it then was kind of like the springboard for things that had to change. I changed, this other person changed, we changed together. It's a pretty amazing to see when that happens. So that's kind of been my experience. Carolyn, are you good?
Yeah, I am. I've had experience. I mean, I can think of a lot of experiences where I've gained understanding by listening to someone's perspective. I spent, and I don't know, maybe it's because we've been talking about American Indians, but I've spent time taking students down to the Hopi and Navajo Nation and listening to, and a lot of what we do is listen to people who live there and have experiences there. And I think, boy, it does. I mean, it's changed how I view the history and view what so many have gone through, and that, you know, it's changed how I think about things. It's really valuable. I think some of my best learning experience have been through going to other places, getting out of where I live and listening to other people. I don't know if I'll try and keep thinking and
That's
add
great.
more.
That's perfect.
Am I next?
Yep.
Okay. The one thing that jumps out at me about discovering who someone is and how it changes me was when I was at the University of Utah doing my undergraduate work. It was in the early 70s, and the Vietnam War was on. Richard Nixon was in trouble, and because of Watergate, and there was a real divide in the university. I remember there was a group of return missionaries. We went over to the Institute of Religion. We take classes together. We'd eat lunch there. It was a real solid community. I really loved the group. And then there were the kind of radical, long-haired hippie types, you know. And these students were in constant war with return missionaries. I remember the editor, and I would write letters to the editor because the Chronicle, the newspaper up at the U, was really controlled by the what we thought was a real radical group. They would write things, and they'd write editorials, and they would take bets who would get the most negative mail back, and they'd win the prize. I remember how shocked I was one day when I went to campus, opened up the newspaper, and there was a snowman that was absolutely obscene. What is this doing in the newspaper? I thought this was just outrageous. I mean, but they loved that. They were just trying to egg people on, to get angry and upset. So I remember the editor. I remember the editor in my junior year. I'd forgotten his name, but wrote an essay, a farewell essay at the end of the year. And he was one of these quite, what I thought quite radical people that I thought were being irresponsible with the press. And he talked about his disillusionment. He talked about how the world seemed to be collapsing, and that everything that he believed in America, the big ideas, America, the president of the United States, all of that seemed to have evaporated in value, and all he really loved and all he cared about now were the people, a handful of people closest to him, his family, his dog. And he said that his dog was worth more to him than the whole life of Richard Nixon. I think I understood him for the first time, the sadness, the disillusionment that he thought America was supposed to stand up to the plate and didn't measure up. I could agree with that, no matter what his political stance was. And I think had I ever met him, I never did. If I think I'd have met him, we would have been brothers. I think I understood who he was, and I think I understood the sadness in his life and how what appeared to me to be irresponsible attacks were really just a way of saying, I'm checking out. It was a sadness to see that, but also a revelation of character that was quite touching.
Thank you. Sonia.
This one I could probably say I really relate to. And just sharing personal experience, I guess, in the church that happened with myself and my kids. And it's one that I don't know that it is understood, but it has to do with one of the reasons why my kids, well, I have 4 kids total, and of all of them, I have one that is actively active in the church. And, one of the experiences was, when we were in a time of a lot of turmoil, like I said, I ended up being divorced and eventually, but we were abandoned by my spouse, basically, where we were just left. And then we came to the church and we needed help. And there was a lot of trauma that had been experienced by my daughter. Well, all of us, with that abandonment. So if anybody understands what abandonment is and how that affects you. And so, we came and we were part of the church, and at that time, sometimes I don't think that everyone always realizes that, when you're going to leaders or whatever, we tend to talk, we tend to make conversations, and then sometimes things that are really, really hard to deal with are transpired through the church or within the ward. And so in this case, my daughter that happened to be younger, she was experiencing a lot of problems. And the things that kind of went forward. It went through the church to the point, or not the church, but the ward, that other members would keep their kids away from my daughter. And I don't think they realized that how that is perceived to a child. You know, that you know, when you walk and you literally see people pulling them away from your child, and she's a child herself, you know, and so the thing is that all of those things, now she has no connection with the church. She doesn't want to have anything to do with it. And it's hard, especially when you think of the gospel as a place of healing, you know, that it's a hospital of a bunch of individuals that are trying to find their way. We're all on a journey, and that sometimes we don't realize. So when it was talking about this social, you know, empathy, that we have to truly try to understand, because a lot of times, because you see a person from the outside and you think they're walking the walk every day and they're coming and they're doing that, they're okay. But, you know, nobody knows what is happening behind the closed doors of someone else. And so it's so important to be able to share stories. It's so important to try and understand experiences, or at least come and talk to the people, you know, that are having an experience. Let them decide if they want to share that story with you or they don't want to share it with you, but don't assume. And then be careful how we relate to one another or speak behind, you know, others. And so it's just so important to talk. Mental health, because I guess that's really the biggest thing. Mental health is just not something that is talked about. It is starting to be talked about, but it is not something that is looked at. Traumas are not addressed. And it's so important to understand that we can be traumatized and we don't know how we're traumatized, and that we have to be careful that we aren't traumatizing in places that we should be healing. And so I just, you know, I can relate to this so much, because, you know, I've seen the effect of what it's done to my family, and it's still doing. So it's not even like it's ended. It's still going, you know. And so I just think that talking and being able to share perspectives, because I know everybody has a different perspective. There's no two people that are going to have the same. But when you're talking, you can start relating, you can, you know, and then you can bring forward that, oh, wow, maybe this happened, you know, because when we don't talk about it, we don't know that things are happening, you know, and we don't give opportunities to say, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know that, instead of just being offended, you know. And so that's something that I've had to sit with myself, is that resistance of, no, I can't blame. I can't, you know, the only thing I can do is try to advocate. And that's what I feel like when it comes, you advocate for yourself, you be able to speak for yourself. And when you provide opportunities like these for healing and talking, then it helps you to unburden yourself some, and it helps you to educate others. You know, my daughter made a really good thing, and I'm sorry it's a little longer, but she made this because she was asked about this. She says, Mom, so many times people see us and they want to touch our hair. Some people are like, oh my gosh, you want to touch your hair? Don't touch my hair. And we get offended. And my daughter has been educating me so much, because she goes, why am I going to be offended? They don't know. She says, as long as you ask me and I tell you it's okay, then it's all good. Now, if I tell you no, But if you can't even be comfortable to come and ask the question, or to, you know what I'm saying, then it makes it where people can't talk. And we have to get past that of not being able to ask questions. Like, ask the question, and allow me to provide you an answer, or share that so that we can all be educated. So anyways, that's my 2 cents on that.
Thank you.
LaSonia, can I ask you a couple of questions?
Sure.
Your daughter that's in the university,
Mm-hmm.
is she active in the church?
That is the one that is very active in the church.
Okay. And do all of your kids live there in Iowa?
No. No. Okay. I have one that's in Iowa, my oldest son, and he's going to be a father soon. So I get to be a first-time grandma. And my youngest daughter lives here with me in Riverton, Iowa. And then Sam lives in Nebraska at Lincoln. And then I have a younger son that lives in Omaha, and he's homeless. And he's honestly happy with that, finding his place with God. Like he is also one that fell away, and he wants to have nothing to do. But he's like, I believe and love God, but he doesn't want anything to do with any kind of either one of them want to do anything with organized religion.
Yeah. Do you ever have a time when your family is all together, like at Christmas or anything like that?
We don't. We very seldom, because there's been a lot of trauma, and a lot of it has been within the church. So, and because I actually happen to be, I would say, a very strong, I have a strong testimony of the gospel. And I guess that's the best way to say it. I have this powerful testimony. My oldest daughter has a powerful testimony of the gospel. And so in spite of everything, that's what keeps us going. But the gospel causes a lot of tension in our family. And then just all of the things along the way.
I really want to meet your kids. I'd like to drop by and meet your son, the one that's on the street, take him out to lunch. We won't talk religion, just to know him. And maybe we could do this when we visit our daughter. She's in Missouri. And what is my goal here? Nothing. I just want to meet him and say hi. So maybe we can do that sometime.
I think my dad's like that.
All right. Well, we will definitely try and arrange that one of these days.
Okay.
Marian, do you want to give us your thoughts?
Sure. And I will confirm that is Mark. He's got the grandest heart of anybody. Just to be, number one, my perfect example of that I'm still going through right now, and you already know about, for Carolyn, I have 2 granddaughters whose mother is from Brazil. And she's just by looking at her, you can tell she's got the native Indian blood of Brazil, whatever that is. I don't know if it's lion or I don't know where it comes from. But a lot of racial different races in Brazil. But just very briefly, the announcement that my granddaughter, the oldest of the 2, made to me, I think she was fearful and hesitant in announcing this to me, is that, Grammy, I'm biracial. And I was stunned by that. And actually, I feel, I'm going to get teary. I feel a little bit cheated of my innocence and not understanding that. These are 2 beautiful girls that I adore. And the oldest of the 2 has thick hair, which is not in our genes in our family. And I get this about touching the hair. I used to love to braid it and fix it, and she was beautiful to me. She has not dark skin. She's very light skinned, but you can tell she's got Latin blood. You just can't. And she's valued in Brazil because she's got blue eyes. And that's rare and admired. Her sister is darker and has brown eyes and has more of kind of an ethnic look about her. But I never looked at them like that before. And it's not that I didn't see their difference in color, but they were just my granddaughters. But this notion of being able to talk about that and how this has affected those two girls feeling biracial and that they're marginalized, I had no clue. So I'm kind of on this journey with them, having to look at them a little bit differently. I don't want to. They're just my granddaughters, but because it's their path and it's our world, I have to. Well, that's something I'm kind of looking at. But I want to also address the number 2 question, because I had quite a shocking realization or change in my paradigm, really, years ago when our parents served 2 missions in Africa. And on one of the missions, they brought home, I don't know who has this, Mark, I'd like to find out. They brought home a painting of a nativity of the Holy Family, and they're all Black. And when we saw that, that was so endearing to me and charming to me. But I have to admit, and I hope this isn't offensive, Sonia, please help me understand how to say this correctly. But actually, part of my thought process is, what? That's not true. Jesus is white. Heavenly Father is white. His wife is white. How do the Black people live with that, or know that their heavenly parents are white and they're a different race? So that's part of my growing up thinking. But it was a conversation that I worked in an operating room at the time. And we had discussions. When you're asleep having surgery, your team is discussing world events. Sorry, that little revelation. But we were talking about this painting, and I remember the anesthesiologist, who is very knowledgeable and loves Africa, made the comment that his understanding, and he had heard this theory or school of thought that proves in somebody's mind that Eve was Black. Adam was white, Eve was Black. I'd never heard that before. I don't know how you prove that, but he said through DNA, they've been able to show that. And again, that challenged my inner voice, my thinking, my whole paradigm about what is real and how I'd always envisioned life, and what does that mean if I'm wrong? And so, and again, I'm still working through that. I'm rebelling against my innocence being stolen, but I have to even think about this kind of stuff. And yet I think there's value, there's importance, and I have to challenge what I have always thought, to the point that, and Sonia, this kind of goes to what you said, that I don't even know. What would it feel like if the truth is my heavenly parents are Black? What does that do to me? And I've had to think about that. I can say right now, I don't know, I'm still kind of working through this. That's okay. It doesn't matter. maybe they're green. I don't know. No, it's this huge paradigm shift in everything that I've always believed or known or grown up with that I really don't know as much as I thought I know.
Marion, I'd like to jump in here with a thought. We had a meeting last night, Rachel and I, some people working on this project with us. And one of them said that the church is commissioning artwork with African Americans.
Oh,
I said, to put up in chapels. And so after the meeting, I was so excited about this. I called up a member of my bishopric and I said, listen, the church is commissioning some artwork, religious artwork with African Americans in it. We don't have any of this in our church. Yeah, and I understand we have to get special permission to do it, which is, excuse me, I won't make a comment.
You'll get in so much trouble here.
Yes, I need to bite my tongue. At any rate, he said he'd look into it. I said, we don't have any African Americans in our ward. I want to have one African American picture I can look at, okay? I'm kind of tired of seeing all these white faces. So he's going to look into it. And, you know, that's back to what you experienced, Marion. Wait, you know, a black religious picture? Wait, that doesn't resonate. Why? Because we've been so isolated that we haven't really thought about this. Think of all the people in the world of various shades of skin.
yes.
And we stick with the, the Swedish model of Jesus. Well, he certainly wasn't Swedish, but we've stuck with that. Now, there's something to be said for that. I mean, you can see a Northern European wanting to paint a white Jesus so they can say, okay, he's one of us. He looks like us. But you take that so far that you think, well, everything about God is white. I'm sorry, we've missed the boat there. So yeah, we ought to have some black Jesuses around, or maybe some, you know, a little darker skin, whatever, because certainly he was not Swedish. So we missed the boat. Anyway, so that was my experience, and I'm hoping we can get a black apostle up in the chapel or whatever. I'm not sure what we're going to get. But, somebody that represents that hundreds of thousands of people that I never see.
Yes. I have to say, Mark, you've got some backing because you go to the temples now. They've got Saratoga Springs, the most beautiful painting of an African American woman in this white dress. I don't know if you've seen it.
Jane.
It's Jane Manning.
That is
beautiful. I think of LaSonia now whenever I see that because she has a story with that. But it's
Yes.
It's beautiful.
But you've also got Oriental people in the temples hanging as well. And it's refreshing and delightful. I love it. So I'm with you, Mark.
Beautiful.
If I can respond a little bit.
Yeah, LaSonia, can I actually will have you go next because I think I want to actually go right into what I have you. I'm pretty sure you'll talk about because we're moving in this direction, because what I'm hearing from everybody here is actually what we're talking about in question 3, in my opinion. So how can the process of truth and reconciliation contribute to social empathy within a community or society? Can you think of examples where this process has been effective in promoting healing and change? What I think I'm hearing here is that, especially Miriam, you said, I saw and heard truth, and I'm having to reconcile both myself and with other people, and then we're moving into a space where we can heal. So let's go ahead, and I know, LaSonia,
No, I was going to kind of respond to the fact where Marion was talking about her granddaughters, you know, and the whole hair thing. And I think one thing that needs to be understood too is that, you know, when we talk about African Americans, not only do we see this questioning or this difference among Caucasian or anyone else, but we see it among ourselves because color is looked at, like she talked about one of the granddaughters being a little darker, having a different texture hair. You know, one has blue eyes. and has, and her looks. And just as much as you think that they're struggling and you're struggling with the fact that they're biracial, that they're getting, that a lot of times we're getting hit on both ends. We get hit among our own, for being light skin, dark skin, coarser hair, finer hair, you name it, all of that. So you're getting hit with those aspects. But then in regards to where you were talking about, like with the pictures and things, for example, a lot of times, and it's what I hear all the time, is why we don't, because we want to see that God he looks like us too. I don't think it really matters whether we think he's white or, I mean, for you, he may be white, but for us, he may be black. We can identify, we can recognize that. And a lot of times, like there's probably one poster that's just come out. It was announced actually in April, and it was a black picture of Jesus. And they look at where he came from, where the location, things like that. And that's where they look at some things. And they have him sometimes as Ethiopian descent, and so there's a lot, and a lot of people have inspirations. When I go into the Winter Quarters Temple, there's what I consider a Native American picture, huge picture when you walk in the door, that, of Jesus. And I just think that, that I honestly, and this is just my opinion, I don't know that Jesus really has a color, because when I heard Joseph Smith speak about him and his identification of him, the brightness of the sun, when I think about that, his him and Heavenly Father, that light, it could be anything, and I just think it's more of it's an identification. So I am starting to see pictures of with Jesus. He's still white, but he's with black children, or so I see it's coming, it's transitioning, and I think it just takes time. But I just think that process of truth and contributing is just allowing people to be able to accept, that if I feel that Jesus, to me, I can relate to him as being black. I look at pictures whereas he may be white, and I can relate to that too. I think it's just being open, and it's just like the hair question, where my daughter says, you're offending me because you're asking me to touch my hair, or you're asking questions. Well, I think we just have to get to that place where everything shouldn't be looked at as an offense. It's the fact that we have to ask questions. We have to, and I think it's with a sincerity of heart. It's just like the Book of Mormon. He says, when you ask in sincerity, is this true or is it not true? Because God already knows what our sincerity is. And so I think that the process of truth and reconciliation is being able to accept if someone else thinks that Jesus may be black, or Jesus may be white, or Jesus may be green. What does it matter outside of the fact that Jesus is the same? His characteristics, his kindness, his attributes, I don't care what color he is, it's all the same. And he's not a respecter of persons, so why should I be a respecter? So if I want to see black Jesus in church, I think that there should be black Jesus in church. There should be a white Jesus. There should be an Asian Jesus. I don't care. So that all feel welcome, and that they feel they belong, and that God is God, and we are his children. And we just need to be able to talk about that. And we need to be able to be okay if somebody thinks that Jesus is black, or if he's white, or if he's green. I don't think we're missing the point. The point is his characteristics and his attributes, and they're always the same. It doesn't matter what color we are.
Thank you. Let's move on to the last two questions, but that gave, I feel like I glean ideas for other conversations. Like that could be a whole other great conversation too. Let's move to these last two. Is there a principle in the gospel that helps bring greater clarity to this issue? And how can we allow space for Christ to be with us and facilitate the healing process as we hear ourselves and others speak about difficult past experiences? We'll go in the same order. I feel for me, speaking of Christ and his ability to help heal, that moves me into like sort of a contemplative space. I want to feel Christ. I want to feel him with me. And if I focus on that, it automatically allows me to open up to other people. It allows me to take and bear what other people are, the pain they're experiencing, and sit with them in that. So for me, Christ is very, he helps me bear that, because I think even just the process of trying to bring Christ into my life and to bring that spirit into my life allows me to be contemplative and thoughtful and mindful of the space that I'm in, so that I'm not just reacting. So there's not just this automatic reaction to what somebody says, but that I'm actively trying to be a better person, trying to be more Christ-like, and that helps me bear other people's burdens, So that for me is how that helps. Carolyn.
Can I go last?
Sure. You can. So I think we have LaSonia next then.
No, I thought Mark is next.
Oh, were you next? Did we go that direction? Maybe
Yep.
we did. We'll go with you, Dad, or whoever.
Well, the only thing I can think of is what my wife told me, Chris, the other day. I have a very tough assignment, and it's both inspiring and very difficult. I'm in charge of music for the ward, and it's hard. I have this vision of what we ought to have there, and I'm talking about Mozart. I'm talking about, I'd like to have some African American, spirituals. But it's tough to get people to do this. People are busy. We have lots of musicians in the ward, none of which want to do anything. So, I'm interested in not just notes. I'm interested in spiritual transformation, the notes that transform lives. Okay. Now that's asking a lot. And so I was pretty discouraged and not feeling that I'd done everything I could. And Chris, my wife, said, Mark, you need to be more gentle with yourself. You're not perfect. You're not doing everything you wish you could do, but you need to look upon yourself with a little more compassion. And I think those were words that were useful for me. Mm-hmm. If I'm going to make mistakes, and I need to pick myself up and just keep moving.
Yeah. All right, I'll just throw it out. Who wants to go next, since I don't even remember the order? You need your mic off, Mary. Yeah.
I can go. The thing that came to my mind, the principle in the gospel that brings clarity, absolutely, for me, is charity. The pure love of Christ, which is what I seek for to understand, and I think is key to this whole thing. For me, and I try and practice this, is a mental exercise with anybody I come in contact with, to see and look for what the Savior sees in them. What is holy about this person? What is the spark of divinity that is within each of us? Sometimes you have to look harder with some than others, but it never fails. there is something worth redeeming in every person and worth cherishing and loving. And it's my goal and challenge to try and find what that is.
Beautiful. All right, Lasonia.
I honestly have to second that, what Marian just said. I think that charity is truly the principle in the gospel, because, you know, he clearly said, you know, that you can do all things. You know, it doesn't matter how loud it is, doesn't matter. But if you don't have charity, you have absolutely nothing, because charity is what makes you step out and be there and go beyond yourself. It makes you be present when you see that there is trouble ahead. It is that love for not only yourself, but for others. The Good Samaritan, you know, to me is like, it represents everything, you know, because you had all of those that thought they were, that left a person that was completely helpless and possibly dying because of whatever it was you thought. You walked around them, you did, well, you know, you could have been the best, you know, the priest or whatever, but it was the person that looked upon this fellow human being and saw the need and was willing to step in and do, and then provide, take him to shelter, and then even say, you know, I will pay you what is additional, you know, for whatever to help when I return. And to me, that's everything. If you don't have charity, you know, you can't, it doesn't matter who you are or what you do in the gospel if you don't love others. So that love God first and love your neighbors, that's everything.
All right, Carolyn, thank you.
So beautifully said, all of you. And the idea that came to my mind was love, charity, and how contagious that can be. I had this experience yesterday. This is my sister-in-law brother is also a friend of mine. So he's kind of related through marriage and also a friend. He's about my age. And he is an ex-meth addict and an ex-Hells Angels member. So a very different kind of life than most of my friends. He also has stage 4 lung cancer right now, and we're just putting him in hospice. And he has a look about him that you might just kind of disregard him as a person, because he looks so unkept and, I don't know, shabby, and I think that could happen. Well, I went into his room, and some physical therapists were trying to get him to try sitting up, and he's very, very sick, so this is difficult. And that I was able to, along with the physical therapist, to kind of refocus on him as an individual and have them see him as somebody who is really worth looking at, really worth understanding, worth talking to, worth being patient with. And it was kind of a collaboration among all of us, including Blade, my friend, where he emerged as a person that I think they started to take a little more seriously, and looking at, as somebody made the comment of looking at people as God looks at, as God looks at people. And that was a real powerful experience, kind of the difference of not really seeing people and then seeing them and loving them and having that feeling of charity.
Thank you. Thank you all for sharing and being willing to share some of these stories. So we'll go on to the last couple, which is, what is one personal experience or story shared today that resonated with you and why? And as you listened to everyone's experiences today, did you notice any common themes or shared emotions? I feel like this one more than the other ones are like this too, a bit too, that for me, while we're talking, I mean, we're kind of like moving around the concept of race. I feel like these conversations, and this one in particular, for some reason, it's like, but we all experience the same emotions. But we all can actually say, yeah, there's been times when I was hurt. I mean, I feel like that we do. And this idea, of charity, it's like, while there's different things that happen to us in different situations and different reasons for that we all have shared emotions maybe, or shared just ideas of just maybe we're human, right? Like we have a shared humanity, and that it doesn't matter ultimately, where we come from or our background, because we really actually, I think, can connect in ways and understand each other in ways that go beyond that, even though we are kind of focused on a particular topic. It seems to be expansive. So anybody else? We'll pick and choose now.
Yeah, I just feel when I hear personal stories and they touch me, it makes me feel more alive and more human. And so I've really appreciated personal stories and personal admissions of, not knowing everything and being so willing to learn. Marian, your story of always having a white Jesus in your mind. I think, anyway, I have gratitude to all of you for making me feel more alive today because of what you've shared.
Thank you.
I'd like to share one thought. You asked what story today has resonated with me. All of them have. Mm-hmm. One that went through my head today was one that wasn't spoken, and Marian mentioned it a few years ago, and where she walked, and she had the habit, I don't know how often, but she had the habit of just walking into a nursing home and saying, "Who needs a visit today?" Mm-hmm. So how do we lead Jesus into our lives? He's at the local nursing home. He's in the Genesis branch. Mm-hmm. He's hiding under the rock in your backyard. All you have to do is find him. The world, I think, is full of sacred power. Mm. And if we believe that, our eyes will open and we will reach out with love to everybody around us, because it is a sacred place here.
Thank you.
Well, for me, I always hear things that resonate with me, and I've been to past couple meetings, and every personal experience has resonated with me in some way. I've recognized common themes and definitely shared emotions, charity, and I am grateful for the transparency, which I feel is so important when you can be transparent about what you feel, because then you can have a discussion, when you're not hiding behind it, when we're able to sit with our feelings and, what our concerns are, our thoughts, then we get to open the door and allow others to respond and have a conversation. And so I just learn something new every time I come, something that I'm like, dang, okay, you know, I get that. And, you know, even from listening to the hymns, how hard that is that Mark just talked about, you know, being someone that works with music, you know, and everybody being busy and not necessarily coming to the table. And so I just think the beauty is that we're here at the table, you know, and we're having a conversation and we're hearing different things, and they are common. And charity is definitely what I heard. I heard love, and that we all love and we care, we want, and we hurt. I heard hurt, you know, and that's that we all experience that. And so I am just grateful to be here. And I definitely, I don't feel like, oh man, I got to be here. I'm excited to be here and to learn and to grow. So
Thank you so much.
I think all I can say is amen. I agree with all of you. I don't think there's anything more I can add. I so appreciate being here. Rachel, this was miraculous, putting this together. Thank you. I do have a question, though. I hear Rachel calling Sonia something different. Are we not pronouncing your name correctly? How do you want us to call you, Sonia?
oh, it's okay. I'm good. My name's Lasagna. You know, I've been called Sonia. I've been called lasagna. I'm all good.
What a delicious personality we have here.
So I'm good. It's
okay. But you go. But the appropriate way is lasagna, correct?
Yes, that's.
Thank you. Thank you. That's what I want to call you.
All right, thank you for that. Okay, so just the next steps based on the stories and perspectives shared, what concrete next steps can we work on individually and or together? And the last time I just kind of we kind of mentioned last time that we discussed going to the Genesis group. We can either do that in person or online. And in our meeting last night, there was a few of them that kind of stepped up and said, we'll take you and we'll introduce you. So these are, African-American members of the church who are willing to to me, it was touching. I don't know how much it meant to them necessarily, but to think it was almost like, we'll put our arms around you and we'll take you. So just know that we are invited and they want to introduce us to people there. So,
okay. So Rachel, I've got this question. If you just show up, that's a scary for me. So just tell me, is there someone in particular that has invited you?
Yes. Yeah. Well, and my dad, you're planning on going, right? On Sunday, it's the 1st. They meet every first Sunday of the month.
Even after general conference,
I think so. It's 5:30 is when they're doing it. I think it's 5:30. I do
it online. So
and I'll probably participate on Zoom because they do have a Zoom link. So that's what I will be doing too. So they're very willing to kind of be there with us. I'll be online.
Okay.
So is there anything else that you feel moved to do at this time, or I think that's a pretty good next step.
I'd like to suggest, and maybe all of you know about this group, Meeting House Mosaic.
It's a great group.
Yes.
They're on Instagram, and they have they're commissioning people of color to do artwork.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, Lasagna, you might have referred to the Black Jesus that they commissioned, and it's absolutely beautiful. But it's interesting to follow them on Instagram if you do that kind of thing. So I'm just going to throw that.
No,
out.
that is a great one, because that their full purpose is to introduce more, not even just like Black necessarily, but I think just different pictures of Christ, and church scenes. And I think they've got some beautiful stuff on their website. So if you are interested in exploring that topic, that is a good place to go to. So, all right. That sounds good. So next week, I don't remember which one I put. This one I kind of did as a 3 series to kind of just introduce the topic of family and working through these kinds of themes. I'm moving the next 3 that I have kind of scheduled. I think I already have them scheduled. They're moving more towards looking at the scripture from Malachi, turning the hearts of the fathers to the children and the children to the fathers, and kind of looking at that with a lens of healing and reconciliation in that respect too. So
I have a question, if I may ask, and I don't know if it's something that could be considered.
Yeah.
But I had this experience, and it was very, very eye-opening for me. It was called a safe haven meditation.
Mm.
And I saw that you put your you put your little things up on here, like as a beginning. And I don't know if it's something that maybe and I could share that with you, that might be something that could be looked at, because it really talks about our fears, and so much, and basically understanding our resistance in thinking.
If you send it to me, that could be a reflection.
Okay.
That we do at the beginning, because that is definitely, I would definitely love to use things like that.
Okay, I will send it to you.
Send it to me. Yeah, that would be perfect. So
I'm going to sign out.
Yep, you need to go.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody.
You're
Thank you, Rachel, for organizing it.
You're welcome.
I appreciate everybody.
Thank you, Carol.
It's a blessing.
Thank you.
All right, we'll see you guys next week.
All right, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.